What if I told you that one of the most confident people you've ever met was secretly terrified almost every day? Not nervous sometimes, not a little unsure, terrified. And what if I told you that the reason you don't feel confident isn't because you're broken, weak, or missing some special personality trait? What if the thing you've been chasing your entire life isn't actually confidence at all? Because I need to tell you something that took me years to understand. Most people spend their entire lives trying to feel confident before they take action. And that is exactly why they never become confident. Think about it. How many times have you told yourself, once I feel more confident, I'll speak up in meetings? Or, once I feel more confident, I'll ask that person out. Or, once I feel more confident, I'll start the business, create the content, share my ideas, apply for the job. But what if confidence doesn't come before action? What if confidence is the result of action? This changes everything. I remember watching a friend of mine walk onto a stage in front of hundreds of people. He looked calm, relaxed, completely in control. The kind of person you look at and think, wow, I wish I had that level of confidence. After the event, I asked him, how do you do it? How are you so confident? He laughed. Not a small laugh. The kind of laugh you make when someone has completely misunderstood reality. He said, confident? I thought I was going to throw up. And I remember staring at him, genuinely confused, because if he wasn't confident, then what was I looking at? That's when he said something I'll never forget. People think confidence means you don't feel fear. Confidence actually means you know what to do when fear shows up. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Because most of us have been sold a fantasy version of confidence. We imagine confident people wake up every morning feeling unstoppable. They walk into every room without self-doubt. They never overthink. They never get nervous. They never wonder if they're good enough. But have you ever actually met someone like that? Or have you only met people who learned how to move while carrying their fear? Because that's the truth about confidence most people never learn. Confidence is not the absence of fear. Confidence is trust. Trust in yourself. And trust, unlike motivation or emotion, can be built. Think about someone you trust deeply. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family member. Why do you trust them? Is it because they told you to? No. You trust them because they've shown up consistently over time. So why do you expect yourself to feel self-confidence when you haven't built self-trust? Let me explain. Imagine you tell yourself, I'm going to start going to the gym. You go once, then you skip 3 weeks. You tell yourself, I'm going to start that YouTube channel. You record one video, then you never upload it. You tell yourself, I'm going to be more social. Then someone invites you out and you make an excuse. What message are you sending yourself? You're teaching yourself that your own word means nothing. And then we wonder why we don't feel confident. Of course you don't trust yourself. You haven't given yourself a reason to. This was one of the hardest lessons I ever learned. For years, I thought confidence came from success. I thought once I achieved enough, earned enough, accomplished enough, then confidence would magically appear. But every achievement simply moved the goalpost. Because confidence doesn't come from proving yourself to the world. It comes from proving yourself to yourself. That's why the first truth about confidence is this. Confidence is built through evidence, not positive thinking, not motivational quotes, not standing in front of a mirror saying, I am powerful. Real confidence comes from collecting evidence that you can trust yourself. So here's a question. What's one promise you can make to yourself today that is so small you cannot fail? Not running 10 kilometers, not reading 50 books, something ridiculously small. Maybe it's doing 10 push-ups, maybe it's reading 2 pages, maybe it's saying hello to one stranger, because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you're placing a brick. And one day you look back and realize you've built a foundation. Now here's where things get interesting. Because even if you understand this, there's another problem. You keep comparing your confidence to someone else's performance. And that's a game you'll lose every single time. I once watched 2 people give presentations. The first person was charismatic, energetic, funny. The audience loved them. The second person spoke slowly. They paused. They seemed quieter. Afterward, I asked people which speaker seemed more confident. Almost everyone chose the first. But when I spoke to both speakers backstage, I discovered something fascinating. The charismatic speaker had delivered that presentation over 100 times. The quieter speaker had done it for the first time. Who was actually more courageous? Who was actually demonstrating more confidence? You see, confidence isn't about looking confident. Confidence is about acting despite uncertainty. And this changes how you see yourself. Because right now you might be comparing your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 20. You might be saying, why can't I speak like them? Why can't I lead like them? Why can't I be as confident as them? But you're comparing your behind-the-scenes footage to their highlight reel. That's not a fair fight. The second truth about confidence is that confidence grows in comparison to your past self, not someone else's present self. Ask yourself this: are you more confident than you were 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago? Because if the answer is yes, then you're already winning. Now, there's another truth that almost nobody talks about. And honestly, this one changed my life. Most people don't have a confidence problem. They have a perfectionism problem. Let me show you what I mean. Have you ever rehearsed a text message 5 times before sending it? Have you ever stayed silent because you couldn't think of the perfect thing to say? Have you ever delayed starting something because you wanted the timing to be right? Of course you have. We've all done it. But perfectionism wears a disguise. It doesn't show up and announce itself. It whispers. It says, just wait a little longer. It says, prepare a little more. It says, you're not ready yet. And the scary part? It sounds reasonable. I remember spending months preparing for something that should have taken me a week. I convinced myself I was being responsible. I told myself I was getting ready. But if I was honest, I wasn't preparing. I was hiding. Because perfectionism gives you a beautiful excuse to avoid vulnerability. After all, if you never try, you never fail. But if you never fail, you never grow. And if you never grow, you never become confident. The third truth about confidence is that action creates confidence, but perfectionism destroys it. So here's something I want you to try. The next time you hear yourself say, I'm not ready, ask yourself a different question. What evidence do I have that I need to be more ready than I already am? You'll be surprised how often the answer is none. And then there's one final truth. This might be the most important one of all. Confidence is not a personality trait. It's a relationship. A relationship with yourself. Think about how you talk to yourself on a bad day. You made a mistake. You said something awkward. You failed at something important. What happens next? For many people, the internal dialogue becomes brutal. You're so stupid. Why would you say that? Everyone thinks you're an idiot. Can you imagine saying that to someone you genuinely cared about? Of course not. Then why do you say it to yourself? Imagine having a friend who followed you around every day, repeating every negative thought you have about yourself. You'd stop being friends with that person immediately. Yet many of us carry that voice around for decades, and then we wonder why confidence feels impossible. Because confidence cannot grow in an environment of constant self-attack. The strongest, most confident people I've ever met aren't people who never fail. They're people who know how to recover from failure without destroying themselves. They know how to say, that didn't go well, but I'm still okay. They know how to separate their performance from their identity. And that's powerful. Because when you stop seeing mistakes as proof that you're not enough, you become free. Free to try, free to fail, free to learn, free to grow. The fourth truth about confidence is that self-respect creates self-confidence. Not self-criticism, not self-punishment, self-respect. So the next time you make a mistake, ask yourself one simple question. If someone I loved made this exact mistake, what would I say to them? Then say that to yourself. Now, remember the question I asked you at the beginning? What if one of the most confident people you've ever met was secretly terrified? Here's what I think. I think that's probably true for almost every person you've ever admired. The speaker you look up to, the leader you respect, the entrepreneur you follow, the person who seems to have everything figured out. They don't have less fear than you. They've simply built a different relationship with fear. They stopped waiting for fear to disappear. They stopped waiting to feel ready. They stopped expecting confidence to arrive like a gift. Instead, they built it. One action at a time, one promise kept at a time, one uncomfortable conversation at a time, one moment of courage at a time. And maybe that's the truth you've needed to hear today. You don't need to become a different person to become confident. You don't need a new personality. You don't need permission. You don't need certainty. You just need to take one step while your legs are still shaking, because confidence was never the thing that comes before courage. Confidence is what remains after you've been courageous enough to discover that you were capable all along.